What's up, Lego builders? Welcome back to Coconut Brick Studios. I've got an interesting week of building in my sights, full of murky pits, pizza parties, and maybe a little Clone Wars stuff.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
I've talked a little bit about what vehicles I'm going to be including in Mimban, and today I'm building my first one. And guess what? It's cheap and free to build if anyone's interested. And I'll be answering one of the biggest questions I've had about the Imperial campaign on Mimban. Who are they fighting? For now, it's time to salute your Emperor, execute Order 66 on that like button, and let's get building. I upload Mimban updates every other week, so there's currently a massive clone battle build on my mock tables from last week's video that needs to be dismantled. Don't worry, this won't be a regular occurrence of my moving Mimban around to do clone mocks. I just had one more big idea I wanted to do before settling into Mimban. But this is another reason why I decided to scale down my large-scale mocks so that I'd have more space and parts for other projects while still building the big ones. But this is a Mimban update, so I'll save the rest of the dismantling for future Ethan to deal with. The chunk I built last week went back into place smoothly, and I bought more base plates, so now I have a fully complete layout to build on, and I'm going to start on the other side of the mock where the Imperial compound will go. Unfortunately, that means more walls. I've basically given up at this point on doing a mock that isn't raised up off the ground, but the initial extra work pays off later on in the build as I get to have a lot more depth and variation in my terrain and builds. And I do enjoy building these walls because I get to do the reddish brown reverse pyramid designs, whatever you want to call them, which look really cool and are a lot of fun to make. The main challenge is not making them look too symmetrical or man-made, so I try to stagger the different peaks and valleys so they're at different heights and don't all look the same. To save on plate, I'm trying to use as much brick as I can by filling in the middle of the valley, then adding plate around the sides and on top until I can run another row of reddish brown brick. This will save more of the plate for the surface detailing where bricks are less effective. And I want to get some fossil pieces next month and start adding skeletons to the walls. This is a pretty time-consuming process, however I want to get the ground in on this side by the end of this episode. So I started a long flat section of just gray brick running along the back, so I'm not too worried about how it looks. Plus, this will allow me to cruise through the back wall and move on to more exciting work like the base. Even the most dedicated of mock builders have their limits, and there's only so much wall building a man can do in a day, so I decided to take a break and switch gears to do some terrain work. There's a trench I want to continue and maybe turn into a swampy pool. Once again, I'm loving this modular way of building. It allows me to tackle little sections of the mock at a time and focus more on detail. I'm gonna fill this open square with plates and pillars that line up with the surrounding terrain, keeping one of them low enough to continue that trench. I do have a haul to unpack full of great parts, some for a World War II village for my second channel, Coconut's Kingdom, but most are just various reddish brown and medium nougat parts from Mimban. I got some pieces for the upcoming trench, as well as these wedge plates and tiles, but most importantly, I got some trans brown tiles from murky water. Some people suggested adding pools of water to the wasteland, which is a great idea, so I got some of these since it looks more dirty and brown, since this isn't a sky blue beach resort on Scarif. I laid down a base of dark bluish gray plate to give the tiles a darker look. I was debating between using black or dark bluish gray, but thought the black might make it too hard to see the tiles in detail. And from there, I'm just trying to create natural looking walls with wedge plates and slopes. I'm not too worried about this one looking round because this is a partially dug trench that was abandoned, so there'll be more flat spots, and it's going to be a lot less symmetrical. This is my first time using trans brown, and I really like how it looks. It's not super vibrant, but adds some great contrast to the side walls and terrain. I didn't get a ton of tile, but I had just enough to finish off this trench, and now I just need to keep adding rows of wedge plates, going from medium nougat to reddish brown, building up until the trench walls take shape and I'm roughly at the surface level. The water is slowly seeping through, flooding the trench, and I had another suggestion to add stuff buried from when the clones and droids fought on Mimban, and I have this gunner helmet I painted as a kid trying to make it into a Geonosian trooper helmet, so it looks old and dirty. I'm gonna partially bury it in the ground as if some Imperial dug it up in the trench while working and tossed it aside, after living out his clone trooper dreams, of course. Everything's done and I can blend it into the surrounding landscape. It's kind of hard to know when I'm at the right height to stop whatever hole I'm building, but the nice thing is if there's a spot that bugs me, I can just go in and add another row or two of reddish brown plate until I'm satisfied. I don't want the entire landscape to look like a family of monster rabbits moved in, so there'll be patches of flat ground with some small holes for a little texture. I thought it'd be cool to have some small wooden bridges for the troops to use to cross certain pools or craters. This is more of an Easter egg to World War I and World War II battlefields than anything in Star Wars, but I think they'll fit the vibe of this mock pretty well. I'm building two designs. The first one is 4 wooden logs connected by metal bands. It's a very homemade, impromptu looking thing, but given the intense nature of the fighting and the fact that there's going to be forests on the mock, I like to think that the soldiers were using hastily constructed bridges to navigate the swamps and mess created by all the fighting. The second one is more complex. I used the wooden 1x2 and 1x4 bricks to still get that wooden look but have a more solid base. I also installed a guardrail on one side. That way if people are crossing when there's an explosion nearby, they don't get flung into whatever dank pit they're trying to cross. Plus, the guardrail just looks really cool. Just as I had hoped, these bridges look great spanning the trench and crater. Let's be honest here, these aren't very necessary. Anyone traversing the ground can easily walk around this crater without losing too much time. I mostly wanted to add these for some world building and side stories to further enhance the mall. Plus, in cases like this, where there's a pretty big swampy trench, being able to cut across the middle could be pretty helpful in a pinch. And speaking of world building, the clone helmet Easter egg was a killer idea, so shout out to those who suggested it. Maybe I'll even add some buried treasure Wat Tambor accidentally left behind, since he's always hauling loot around. I was able to partially bury it in the ground just enough that it's mostly submerged, but you can still get a good look at the helmet. I do want some feedback on the bridges. I'm not sure which option to go with moving forward, so let me know in the comments which one you prefer. This trench took a lot of thinking and rebuilding, but the end result is pretty close to what I was envisioning. I can easily see Imperial troopers digging this, hitting an underground pool of water, and being forced to dig in somewhere else for their pizza party as this one slowly fills in. The gray plate underneath makes the tiles more visible than if I'd gone with black, and the whole thing adds some great contrast to the terrain. I'm definitely going to be making more of these murky pools. Not much to report over on this side. I'm still not done with the base wall, which is proving to be a lot more tiring than I thought. But overall, it's enjoyable work, and I decided to make most of this back part gray and flat, since it would make sense for the Imperials to build where the bedrock is closer to the surface. Since, as they say, a wise man builds his house upon the rock. I did, however, make a mistake that I forgot to address last week. Should I include a black frame around the mock or not? Most of the big mocks I've done in the past didn't have a frame, but I did do one around Coruscant, which looked pretty cool, and I was going to do one for Mimban, but I forgot. I'm still at the point where I can easily add one in, but the fact that I forgot about it multiple times makes me wonder if it's even worth adding. At last, it's time to talk Imperial Walkers. One of my favorite aspects of the Imperial Army is its vehicles, one of which is the All-Terrain Defense Turret, or ATDT. Probably one of the most iconic things to come out of the Battle of Mimban. I knew I had to include a couple. It's basically a walking heavy gun used to carry out long-range artillery strikes before the infantry moves in. There are a few ATDT designs out there, and one that really caught my eye was designed by Lego Provo Bricks. It's not too big or bulky, but still looks impressive and posable. Brickvault has one as well, but it's bigger and looks a little goofy in my mind, even though the legs are more accurate to the actual walker. So I gave Lego Provo Bricks design a try. As an added bonus, he has a tutorial of how to build it in his showcase video, which is super helpful. I built this years ago, so unfortunately I don't remember how much it cost, but I do remember it was pretty cheap. His design is a little on the small size, but doesn't look undersized, which is perfect since I can fit it into mocks much easier. And the turret swivels from left to right. If you add an extra round plate to the turntable, it can swivel a full 360 degrees. There's a little cockpit for the pilot, and the turret can't move up or down, but I don't even know if the actual ATDT has that option. And you can elevate the barrel pretty easily just using the legs. Overall, I highly recommend this build, and as of right now, I think I'll probably have one or two complete walkers with the wreckage of more laying around the battlefield. One of the biggest challenges I faced when planning for Mimban was depicting who the Imperials are fighting. You can't really tell from the battle scenes, but they're fighting against Mimbanese rebels who look like this. I even found a custom Lego Mimban rebel made by Alex Astor on Flickr that looks about as accurate as I think you can get. I tracked down the head and torso they used on Bricklink to make my own. These being rebels, I wanted to have slight variations in the torso, legs, and hair. That way each fig varies slightly from the others and they look less like an organized army. I built some custom blasters using the Star Wars rifle and some wrenches and other greebling bits to make them look beefier and more powerful than your typical blaster. I might even try to find some armor plate for the rebels to wear to make them look even more fearsome. These guys are awesome. The red skin blends in with the surrounding terrain surprisingly well, and they're packed to the gills with detail, which is really going to elevate the finished mock. Let me know in the comments what you think of these guys. I slogged it out and finished the rest of the foundation walls, so at last I can unleash the full might of my plate collection on Mimban and get ready for the Imperial base. To start, I placed a row of pillars that'll support the plates, and I must say it's really nice to be working with such short heights like 9 bricks instead of the typical 50 to 100 plus brick high monstrosities I've been doing for years now. It saves me a ton of time and pieces, and I don't have to spend hours doing filler work. It's always so satisfying plating off a big open chunk like this, especially considering I have all the parts already so I can just build until I'm done. I wish I could use the 16 by 16 bricks instead of plates for extra support, but they're a little pricey. I finished off the far corner, which unfortunately was just short of a 16 by 16 plate. Then all I had to do was cover the sides of the plate. That way there isn't any bright green plates peeping out from under the ground, since I don't think Mimban had any golf courses. I have a decent amount of space to work with now, but I'm still worried it's not big enough for the base. I need it to be able to comfortably hold a juggernaut as well as some smaller vehicles and a repair bay. As of right now, I was going to have the base area stop here and the trench be here, but I may need to push everything this way even more to fit the base and trench. That's not a huge deal though, since there's not going to be anything on the other side of the trench other than desolation. This was a great week of building. I especially enjoyed your guys' suggestions, which are already improving the mock a lot. And I want to bury some droid parts and maybe some more clone accessories in the future. I'm not feeling super confident about the base, however. It's going to be the centerpiece of this build, and I want it to be large and imposing. And other than having a repair bay inside a rounded, almost airplane hangar shape, don't really have a solid vision for it. So I'm going to make figuring out the base my top priority moving forward. That's a wrap for this video. Don't forget to let me know what you thought about this mock down below in the comments, and I will catch you next time. But until then, happy building.